نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه. And we've been talking about Ahlul Bayt, the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so today is, I guess, the 6th session in that series, and it will continue on for a while because it's a very expansive topic. And as I've said, I want to go over this, kind of go over things initially chronologically. Of course, for those who've been listening in from the beginning, the first one was really more of an introduction, so it's kind of a general overview. And there are points in that we'll go back to as we continue. And then toward the end, try to tie things together, inshallah. Last week we spoke about Badr, the Battle of Badr, and more specifically the role of Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh, within Badr. And according to Ubaydullah ibn Abdullah, Assalamu alaikum. So according to Ubaydullah ibn Abdullah ibn Utbah ibn Masud, who is one of the 7 fuqaha among the tabi'een of Medina Munawwara, he is among the teachers of Umar bin Abdul Aziz, rahmatullah alayh. He is the grandnephew of Abdullah ibn Masud, radiallahu anhu. So Abdullah ibn Masud, radiallahu anhu, is amongst the companions number 2 as far as the knowledge of fiqh. And of course he's second to Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh. So according to this faqih, who is, again, one of the greatest faqih of his times, he said that Ali was Badr. Because, of the compliments of Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh, in the Battle of Badr. 36 of the 70 of the leaders of Quraysh that were killed, he killed directly, and another 13 he helped in. So, we spoke about that last time, so that was 2 weeks ago, since we didn't have class last week. But today I want to go over the marriage of Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh, to the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu Fatima salamullah alayha. And then if we have time, some aspects of Uhud. We'll see where we fall as far as time goes. So after the Battle of Badr, of course the position of the Muslims now is much stronger. Before, everybody was simply waiting that Quraysh would come and demolish and destroy them and end Islam altogether. And now, there's that doubt in their mind, will Quraysh be able to do this? Or rather, when will Quraysh be able to do this? And so, of course, again, the situation in Medina is slightly better for the Muslims. Still, the hardships continue. The daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, he had 4 daughters. The oldest was Zainab, radiallahu anha, and she was married before the declaration of prophethood to her cousin from her mother's side. And he did not accept Islam until much later. So in the Battle of Badr, he actually was one of those who came against the Muslims, not because of any animosity against Islam, but because of the social pressures. And as I said, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he sent the soldiers out in the battle, he gave them, one of the lists that he gave them was a list of people who had come into the Battle of Badr without animosity against the Muslims. And so that if you could avoid harming them in any way, you should do that. So he's one of those amongst that list. So he was captured in the Battle of Badr. and he, of course, ransom was paid. And part of the ransom that was sent for him was a necklace that Bibi Khadija radiallahu anha had given her daughter Zainab at her wedding. It's important to note here, which I didn't mention, is that he did not allow his daughter to immigrate with Rasulullah, or allow the daughter of Rasulullah to immigrate, or his wife. So Abu As, who's the husband of Bibi Zainab, again, he's not Muslim. She, of course, is, but he didn't allow her to emigrate. And so when the necklace was presented as part of his ransom, of course, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, remembering his wife and remembering everything, tears were rolling down his blessed cheeks. And so the companions who had basically whose lot he fell under, so those would be the people who would receive the ransom. And these people were from the Ansar. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, we will free him, without any ransom. We'll return the ransom. And so he was freed, and Rasulullah, he returned the necklace, and he said that I'm freeing you under the condition that you allow my daughter to come to me, which he did. But this is kind of digressing a little bit, but it's an important thing to note here, is that when he went back, he made arrangements that his wife, who again is the oldest daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that she should immigrate, and join her father. And so he had his younger brother make the arrangements, and his younger brother was taking her in the middle of the day. And when the Quraysh, they saw this, they felt insult, upon injury, because they just had lost Badr and lost all their leaders, and now the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being allowed to leave freely. And so one of them attacked her. And this is one thing that I mentioned in Jummah this past Friday, is when it comes to Islam, all the rules change. When it comes to the Muslims, all the rules change. Before, Quraysh had some level of decency, that they would not attack the women, but now, even that didn't matter. So they attacked his daughter, who fell off the camel and miscarried because of the fall. It actually ended up being the wife of Abu Sufyan, Hind, Hinda, who would stop this attack, and then Abu Sufyan stepped in as well and told Abu As's brother that, look, why are you doing this in the middle of the day? You know the condition of the people now, so take her at night. So eventually they got her to her father, but her wounds never healed. And years later she would pass because of these wounds, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would bury her. All of the daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were buried by him, except for Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. And so this is the oldest daughter. The next daughter is Bibi Ruqayya, who was married to Uthman radiallahu anhu. And then she passed on the day of Badr. And so as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was returning with his army with the victory of Badr, Uthman radiallahu anhu was returning from Jannatul Baqi after burying his wife, who is the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then later Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had Kulthum, his third daughter, married to Uthman radiallahu anhu as well. But the youngest daughter, as we mentioned, she was born in the year of the revelation. Her position is very different, even amongst the daughters. She is the one who was there, as we mentioned, you know, when the entrails of the camel were placed on the back of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she removed them. And she again has this special position, and everybody understands that, you know, including the companions, including the members of the household. And we'll talk about some of the statements of some of the other wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding her later on. But because of this, you know, all the other companions also wanted to marry her. So that because they knew if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave her hand in marriage to them, that would really make them close to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because how close he was to her. And so Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, after Badr, he asked for her hand in marriage, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam refused. And then Umar radiallahu anhu also asked, and he was also refused. And when these two were refused, you know, no one else had the guts to ask. You know, because when these two were refused, it's like, who's going to be accepted? But these two also understood that if they were refused, who would be accepted? So the two of them came to Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh, and said to him, they said, why don't you ask for her hand in marriage? And he said, what if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says no? You know, because the rejection of the beloved is worse than death. He said, what if he says no? And says no, he won't say no. He won't say no to you. You know, you just need to ask. He says, I don't have anything. They said, just ask. So they insisted. You know, and so he asks Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when he asked, then it became very apparent that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was waiting for him to ask. And so he asked, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says yes. You know, but then he says, but what do you have to offer to my daughter? You know, as mahar, as a gift, as something. And he said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I don't have anything. All I have is Dhul-Fiqar, his sword, and my shield, and nothing else. He literally owned nothing. Everything he did and his whole existence was simply the service of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, well, you sell the shield, and with that money then you buy, you know, a dress, and that will be part of the mahar. And so, you know, he's thinking, okay, who's going to buy my shield? So he sets out to the marketplace, and Uthman radiallahu anhu asks him, he says, what are you doing? And he says, you know, I've asked for the hand of the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in marriage. And he said, yes, so I'm going to sell my shield so I can, you know, arrange for the mahar and other things. So Uthman radiallahu anhu asked him, he says, well, you take 400 dirham for it. 400 dirham for the shield was a lot. You got to understand that this is a time when 3 dirham will buy you a cow. Dirham were the silver coins, the larger silver coin. Dinar were the smaller gold coins. So, you know, 3 dirham you can buy a cow. So he said yes. So he hands him the shield. He hands him 400 dirham. And then Uthman radiallahu says to him, he says that it's only right that, you know, the groom should be given a gift. So he hands the shield back to him. He says, this is my gift to you for your wedding. So, you know, he bought this nice dress, and he gives it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to give to, you know, his daughter to, which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam does. Gives it to his daughter as a dress for the wedding. And so time is arranged, everything's set, and she, when it's time for her to go, she puts on the dress and she thinks, oh, what a beautiful dress and how nice I look in this dress. And as she has this dress on, there's a knock on the door. And this woman who's begging, she says, do you have something that you can give me in the name of Allah? This is the daughter of Rahmatul Alameen, the mercy to all of creation, the blessing to all of creation, the distributor to all of creation. And she is truly her father's daughter. And so, and she is literally, she is the apple of her father's eye. And this apple never fell from the tree. They say the apple doesn't fall from the tree. Well, it still falls. Well, this one, it never fell from the tree. It is always part of that tree. And so when this old woman, when she knocks and she asks for something in the name of Allah, Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha, she thinks to herself that, how beautiful this dress looks upon me, and how much more beautiful will it look upon her. And so she says, wait a minute, closes the door, puts back on her old clothes, takes that dress and hands it to this woman. And when she comes for the wedding, she comes in her regular clothes. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked her, where is the dress? She says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this woman came and I thought how much more beautiful would it look on her, and I gave it to her. These are the ones who never forgot us, who never forgot the Ummah. And never forgot their responsibilities, but they fulfilled those responsibilities, above and beyond. And that when the wedding took place, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says to his daughter, he says that I have married you to the best man from my family. And one thing I'm going to say here without saying it yet, but something that I will emphasize later on more so. Everything's position is in accordance to its connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is sallallahu alaihi wasallam khayru khalqillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the best of creation. Why are we the best of nations? People misunderstand that verse that you are created the best of nations, and you enjoin what is good and forbid what is evil. So their understanding is, we're the best because we enjoin what's good and forbid what's evil. No. Every nation was ordered to do this. And if you look at us, we're not even doing it like we should be doing it. But we are the best of nations because of our connection to Him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why are Quraysh considered the best of tribes? Because of their connection to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is Banu Hashim considered the best of the Quraysh? Because of their connection to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is the Quran the best of books? You know, people say, oh, it's the Kalamullah, it's the word of Allah. Well, that's true, but then the Torah that was revealed to Musa alayhi salam was also the word of Allah. The Injil that was revealed to Isa alayhi salam was also the word of Allah. But what sets the Quran apart from the other books? It's the best of books because it was revealed to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So then who is the best of households? And he says that I am marrying you off to the best man of my household. So, you know, of course, they got married. And they moved into the house, a house that was somewhat away from where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's house was. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's house was connected to the masjid. The door opened into the masjid. You had, you know, like Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's house was also this manner too. It was connected to the masjid, close to the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you had various houses of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that were just like this. Because each wife was given a house, and here, you know, we've got to get this mindset clear. When we talk about the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we're not talking, you know, a 4-bedroom, 5-bath, and you know, kitchen and dining and all this other stuff. The house was one room. That one room was the kitchen. It was the dining room. It was the bedroom. It was the living room. It was it. When guests came, they simply drew a curtain in between, you know, after the command of hijab came. That room was 9 by 14. That was the house. Of course, the houses of the Muslims didn't have bathrooms inside, so they would have to go out. The houses of the Jews in Medina Munawwara had indoor plumbing, so they had bathrooms in the house. But the house of the Muslims, none of them had bathrooms in the house. They had to go out. And it's interesting because the women would go out in the darkness of the night. It's kind of like ultimate control of their bodies. So this was the house. So when the Fatima Salamullah alayha gets married, of course, again, Ali radhiyallahu anhu, he doesn't have a lot of wealth. You know, he doesn't really have any wealth from what we think of as wealth. But you know, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will send him off on expeditions, he doesn't have time to come up with to make a career, you know, to establish a business, to do any of these things. And so, you know, they're living in this house somewhat far from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There was a companion who had given a good bit of land to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the houses and for other things as well. And he had land that was right next to the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he kind of heard through the grapevine that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted his daughter close to him. So he came running to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "Ya Rasulullah, I have this property, you know, I want to give it to you. This is my gift." And he says, "Why didn't you say anything?" And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that I was shy because you've given so much, and I don't want to be a burden upon you. And his attitude, the attitude of this companion, this Ansar, which is the attitude that we should have, but unfortunately don't. But this kind of summarizes the attitude of the various companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Ya Rasulullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what you accept from us is more love to us than what you leave for us. You know, just like when it comes to sadaqah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that, you know, what you send before you is your wealth. What you keep behind, that's the wealth of your heirs. You know, what you send ahead is better for you. What you leave behind becomes an issue or the means of problems within the families. And we see this. And so eventually they shift basically next door to the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this marriage took place shortly after the Battle of Badr, which took place on the 17th of Badr took place in the 17th of Ramadan. The next Ramadan, on the 15th of Ramadan, Imam Hassan alayhi salam is born. And I'm going to come back to him if I have time today. You know, if not, then we'll start covering him somewhat starting next week. Because I want to cover aspects of Uhud, and the Battle of Uhud first. So again, remember this: 15th of Ramadan, 3rd year of Hijrah, is the birth of Sayyidina Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And 15th of Shawwal, which is the very next month, 1 month later, exactly 1 month later, you have the Battle of Uhud. When the people would go into battle, you would have amongst the army or with the army women who would also come to basically tend to the wounded and to give them water and food, you know, as the fighting is going on. And it's interesting, the people who came. If you look at those, I mean the women who came, and we all know about Ammara radiallahu anha, who, you know, for those who've been listening to the Friday talks, and we spoke about her 2 weeks ago. And we've spoken about her before as well. And about her, she came with the intention of treating the wounded and giving them water, but ended up picking up the sword and fighting, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would actually say, you know, during the battle and even later on, that she fights better than so-and-so, and she would take the name of some man and so-and-so, and she swings a sword better than so-and-so, and, you know, so, but she says that, you know, the people that came with her, the women that came with her, included Salama radiallahu anha, one of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Bibi Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, another one of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she just gave birth a month ago. You know, she has a 1-month-old child in the house, and yet, you know, she's there in the battle to tend to those who have been wounded. And as we will see, she is also the one who tends to her father's wounds from this battle as well. So you know, one of the interesting points here, and they're a lot of interesting points, but one of them is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not leave his family in their homes, you know, for safety or anything else. He brought them with him, you know, into this battlefield. Yeah. So we know, you know, the Battle of Badr took place outside of Makkah. I mean, Battle of Uhud. The Battle of Uhud took place outside of Medina Munawwara. at the base of the mountain of Uhud, which is on the northern side of Medina. And we all know, and we've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go through the details of the battle itself. There are certain points I want to emphasize. Initially, the Muslims are winning. The flag bearer must have been Umar radiallahu anhu. And so the Muslims are winning. Hamza and Ali radiallahu anhu are chopping down, the flag bearers of Quraysh. It was a whole family that was in charge of the flag of Quraysh. And so as soon as the battle begins, Hamza radiallahu anhu rides out, and the flag is the most protected object in the battle, because if the flag falls, that means your army has lost. And so Hamza radiallahu anhu, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as his nurse brother, there was 3 years difference between the two of them, he rides out, and the first flag bearer he chops down. So so his riding out isn't simply, he rides out to some guy holding a flag and chops him down. He broke through their lines, through all of that defense, and chops him down. And immediately the one behind him picks up the flag, and Ali radiallahu anhu chops him down. And then immediately the one behind him picks the flag up, and Hamza radiallahu anhu chops him down. And then immediately the one behind him, and then Ali, and then Hamza, and then Ali, and then Hamza. So 7 of them are chopped down one by one. In the middle of all of this security and protection, again, you got to, we keep forgetting that, but this is something you got to remember when we talk about this. They're not simply fighting against a dude holding a flag. They're fighting against all of these people defending that guy, and still breaking through their lines. And this is when the Muslims are outnumbered 4-1, because the Quraysh had 3,000 army. The Muslims were left with 700 after the 300 hypocrites, turned back. So the 7th time, वो देखो वो ऑन है ऊपर ऑन है ठीक है छोड़ देते हैं बैटरी तो नहीं डाउन हुई इसकी देखो ये वो ऑन है ग्रीन लाइट ये माइक में माइक के पीछे
green pause thing on?
नहीं ये लाइट इधर इसकी लाइट माइक की इधर ये माइक
Yes, huh?
okay. So in all of this, so 7 of them fall, and now the flag is laying down. No one's, picking it up. And this is when the 50 archers and the Muslims are pushing forward. Quraysh is running for their lives, leaving whatever they have. And you got to remember here, back then, in order to, you can't run very fast in armor. It's kind of hard to run in armor. So when you're running from a battlefield, you're taking you off your armor. Armor was expensive stuff. So they're running, leaving their armor and their weapons because they want to get away. And the Muslims are going behind them, and as they're going behind them, some of them are also picking up what's being left behind. And this is when the 50 archers, they see this, and now the discussion starts between them as to, oh, we need to go and join our brothers in this victory. The battle is over. And basically 40 of them or 42 of them abandon their post. 8 of them maintain their post, 8 or 10 of them. And this is when Khalid notices this breach. And of course Khalid isn't Khalid radiallahu anhu at this point. He's simply Khalid bin Walid. And he reroutes his cavalry around them, martyrs the 10 remaining, and then basically sandwiches the Muslims in between and starts attacking them from behind. And in this commotion, everyone is swept away from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. everyone is swept away, with the exception of one. Now, this is one of the things that is mentioned as one of the virtues of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, radiallahu anhu. And it's mentioned by his daughter, the mother of the believers, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Bibi Aisha Siddiqa, radiallahu anha. And she says that the first person, amongst those who are swept away from around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he's left alone. So the first person to return to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu. But she doesn't stop here. She says, and what he sees when he returns is that Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh is there standing with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam defending him. So what that tells us is that everybody else was swept away, but the only one who stood firm in that position was Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. But again, this is one of the virtues of Abu Bakr, that he was the first to return. And now this is when the others start to return. And Ali was defending Rasulullah, and then Talha bin Ubaidullah comes, Zubair bin Awam comes, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas comes, Abu Talha al-Ansari comes, Amara comes, her husband Ghaziyah, and her two sons. Actually, they were there before she arrives. The three of them were there. She joins them, and this whole family is fighting together, defending Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells Ali to go forward to push the enemy back, because now there are enough people there to defend him. Enough people have rallied around him to defend him. Ali can now go into the opposing army and fight from there. And various waves of attacks that Ali single-handedly fends off. You have all of these other companions that are also fending off waves of attack. This is when, we've talked about Uhud, when all those companions, the Ansar, who lined up one by one to stand in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and take the arrows on their backs as they were coming down. But coming back to the emphasis on Ahlul Bayt for now. So, of course, eventually the Muslims are able to get Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the foot of Uhud, and then eventually on top of Uhud. And once the Muslims get on Uhud, the Quraysh can't follow. Of course, the aftermath of this is that 70 of the Muslims have been martyred, which includes the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Amir Hamza, radiallahu anhu, who is Sayyid al-Shuhada, the leader of the martyrs of Jannah, or the leaders of the martyrs. And so he's amongst them. And eventually Quraysh leave. During the battle, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was wearing chainmail, and one of the Quraysh, when in the attack, they struck him sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the sword, and it broke off two of the chain links, which were embedded into his cheek. Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah, he pulled them out with his teeth. And we've talked about this before, not too long ago. And so when he pulled them out, for each one that he pulled out, he lost a tooth. And then the blood started to pulsate out because it severed an artery. And Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha is the one who cauterized the wound. And she burned a piece of cloth and put it in there and cauterized the wound. And of course, Abu Ubaidah, he lost a tooth when he pulled each link out, and the companion said that he was more handsome without those 2 teeth than he was with those 2 teeth. You know, because these were things that were given in the service of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, so there is no loss when you do that. You know, just like when we give sadaqah or when we give zakat, it does not reduce our wealth. It in reality increases our wealth. You know, if our iman is and our intention is correct. So eventually, of course, Qurayshly, even, you know, we've and all the other aspects of that happened, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, along with the companions, they buried those who have been martyred. And every time Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would make Salatul Janazah on anybody else amongst the martyrs of Uhud, he would also make Salatul Janazah again upon his uncle Hamza radiallahu anhu. You know, they were very, very close. And Hamza radiallahu anhu became Muslim simply for the pleasure of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But, you know, if you remember, after the Battle of Badr, Ridwan, the angel who is the guardian of the gates of heaven, he came down and he said a couplet: La fata illa Ali, la sayfa illa dhul fiqar. That there is no youth except for Ali, and there is no sword except dhul fiqar. You know, this doesn't mean that, you know, there's no sword, that no other sword exists. No, you know, it's talking about that level of a sword. You know, and it's not the sword itself, it's the hand that wields that sword. You know, it's talking about Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. Yeah, you know, there are other youths, but there's no youth like this youth. And so Ridwan, he says this then, and there's a reason why he said that. And again, as I said back then, I'm going to talk about that later on, and inshallah we'll bring that up again later on. But after Uhud, you know, it's interesting. You know, if you read the Quran, there's no place in the Quran, or even you see any place where any angel comes and praises any one of the companions, or the heroism of any of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in any of the battles. When you read Surah Al Imran, because it also deals with the Battle of Uhud, much of it does. It does correct the attitudes and the actions of the Muslims in Uhud. Okay. So it does point out, you know, some of the attitudes that were not proper, and, you know, and some of the actions that had been taking place, or that had taken place, and so it does that. But after Badr, again, Ridwan comes. After Uhud, Jibreel al-Islam comes, and he recites the same couplet and praises Ali and his valor in this battle. And he says again, La fata illa Ali, la sayfa illa dhul fiqar. That there is no youth except for Ali, and there is no sword except for dhul fiqar. And this is when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, Ali o minni wa ana minhu. That Ali is from me and I am from him. The response that Jibreel al-Islam gives is very interesting, you know, if you ponder upon it. He says, wa ana minhuma, and I am from you both. He doesn't say that the two of you are from me and I am from you both. He simply says, I am and I am from you both. You know, and if you think about this, this actually connects back to that hadith that we spoke about very early on, actually when we started this, which is mentioned by Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal in 2 places, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that my nur and the nur of Ali were one. until 14,000 years before the creation of Adam alayhi salam. But we also know that everything is created from the nur of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the nur of Jibreel is actually created from the nur of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Jibreel Islam is here emphasizing this point, that he understands that the nur of Ali and the nur of Rasulullah were one. And so he says that I am created from you, or I am from you both. You know, this is an aspect that unfortunately most of us don't think about. But it also, you know, for those who do ponder it, you know, it helps us at least somewhat conceptualize, you know, the maqam and the status of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. I mean, we can't completely do that, that's an impossibility, but at least gives us a glimpse into his maqam and into his status and into his position. You know, so Jibreel, who is the leader of the angels, you know, who is amongst the wazir of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the heavens. He is saying, he is coming down, he is praising Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. And then when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Aliyu minni wa ana minhu, that Ali is from me and I am from him, he says, wa ana minhuma, and I am from you both. This also showing his position, you know, which is well beneath the position of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, or acknowledging that position. So that kind of, in a nutshell, kind of at least gives us a glimpse of Ahlul Bayt connected to Uhud. Now coming back, and I'm sure I've missed a lot of things, and some of those things I'll bounce back and forth from, or to. But I want to come back to the birth of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Okay, because this occurred, his birth occurred exactly 1 month before Uhud. And so he is born, and say when he is born, you know, Ali radhiyallahu comes running to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and saying, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, come, you know, your son is born in your household. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he comes and he asks Ali radhiyallahu, he says, what will you name him? And Ali radhiyallahu, he says, Harb. Harb means war. You know, Ali is this great warrior. Again, you know, no one can withstand his blows, his strikes. And, you know, and he wants to show this in his sons. So I've named him Harb. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says no. He says name him Hassan. You know, Hassan is from beautiful. Because and literally, you know, Hassan alayhi salam, not only that physical beauty, but the beauty of that character, which we will see later on. You know, as far as the physical beauty, you know, from his waist up, he was, you know, I guess a perfect image or a perfect reflection of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he enters the house, you know, the first thing he does is he takes his son, his grandchild, who refers to as his son. He says, "Give me my son." So he takes him, and the first nourishment that Imam Hassan alayhi salam receives in this world is the blessed saliva directly from the tongue of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. same as his father. And it will be the same for his younger brother when he arrives. But this is Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And these are the ones who will grow up in this household, in the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so Imam Hassan alayhi salam is born, and of course this is also another moment of joy. Then of course Uhud comes, and then you have the martyrdom of Amir Hamza radiallahu anhu. But when we look at this again, these are people who are willing to sacrifice their families, for the good of Islam, for the pleasure of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we'll see no less, when we talk more about Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and we talk about, the rest of the family as well. That's coming. So this was kind of a nutshell as far as today, dealing with Uhud, the wedding of Bibi Fatima Salamullah alayha and Sayyidina Ali Karamallah Wajh. So this was the third year of Hijrah. So basically what will happen now, the next year is when Imam Hussein alayhi salam will be born. And so he will be born in the month of Sha'ban. So of the following year. And it's interesting here. The same thing with Imam. When we look at the two of them, we see these parallels because they in essence completed each other, figuratively and literally. When we look at their lives, if a rule had two aspects, if a law had two aspects to it, one of them fulfilled one aspect, and the other fulfilled the other aspect. When you had different aspects of various things and different aspects of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that needed to be exemplified, we see this shift. They're doing the same thing in reality, simply showing different aspects of the same entity. Okay. But one thing here, and since I got a few extra minutes left, I was thinking I would be done by now, or time would rather be up by now, is that Surah 33, verse 33. So I want everybody to read it, and more specifically the last half of that verse, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the purification of Ahlul Bayt. And I guess we'll talk about that because we've talked about that a little bit before. We'll talk about that again, and then connect that to the births of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Because one of the aspects of Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha was that she never missed a salat for any reason. Not even for the reasons that are valid for women to miss their salats. Like when women go through their monthly issues, the salat that they miss, they don't make up. The fasting that they miss in Ramadan, they are to make up, but they don't make up the salat. Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha never missed any salat, even for that reason, because that was not an issue for her. Because she's always in a condition of purity. There was never a moment for her that was impure. So we'll talk more about this next week, and then if we have time, get into Khandaq and the contribution of Ahlul Bayt and contribution of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh in Khandaq, and the blow that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam refers to as being heavier than all of the actions of all of the rest of the ummah combined. So we'll go over that next week, inshallah. So any questions? Yeah, I think for the next few weeks it'll be simple stuff as far as historically. Simple. I think next week we might get into a little bit where there might be some questions, but any questions in general anyway.
Khandaq and Uhud was how many months apart?
What's that now?
Battle of Khandaq and the Battle of Uhud.
It was the Uhud took place. The question is, what's the time span between Khandaq and Uhud? Khandaq took place in the 5th year of Hijri, and Uhud took place 3rd year of Hijri. So between Badr and Uhud, they're 13 months apart. I don't remember exactly how many months, but roughly about 2 years difference between those two battles. Because after Uhud, you have a lot of smaller skirmishes, basically other clans that are trying to seize the opportunity, thinking that the Muslims are down and out. But Quraysh is smarter than these other smaller clans, so they realize that they might be down, but they're not out. So that's where the planning starts coming in, and of course the tribes of Banu Nadir, who were exiled before this and had joined the Jewish tribes in Khaybar. So they're the ones who basically instigate this and are a catalyst in trying to get all of the clans together, because Khandaq is basically a coalition that has come against the Muslims as a whole. So basically all of the major tribes of Arabia, along with some of the Jewish tribes, who basically kind of formed one massive army to come and finish things once and for all. So it's roughly about 2 years. Anything else? I'll get the more exact number on that later on, inshallah. Any questions? Good, inshallah. I guess we'll go ahead and end today. We'll pick up, like I said, from here next week, inshallah. But read the verse, Surah Ahzab, Surah number 33, verse 33. So read 33, 34. Because that way you'll also understand some of there are large groups now that claim that, oh no, this verse isn't for the household, this is simply for the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we'll go over that, and like I said, I've gone over that a little bit. But I'll go over that more, inshallah. Somebody had a question or wanted to say salam or something? Alright, so we'll end here, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa ala salli ala Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa barik sallallahu alayhi wa sallallahu ta'ala ala khayra khalqihi Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.